So, I've been gone for a bit, 2 weeks and stuff, but I haven't had small video progress. I've been working on some stuff behind the screens that is going to be in this video. I'm kind of hoping for this channel to kind of, since I've got so much work that's already going into stuff pre-debut, I might as well use it to get myself used to producing stuff and making stuff on YouTube and being myself, especially on recordings. So this is probably going to be a more regular thing, is just small progress updates that I'll be uploading, hopefully at least every 2.5-ish, 3-ish weeks of just video and so on. Basically 2 weeks worth of working on stuff, and then however long I take to edit it together and render out the time-lapse and so on. That said, it's a bit long of a video, 10 hours of actual production time, and I forgot to record a lot. Especially before the stuff that you see recorded here. That's basically not recorded at all. But yeah, which brings me to the last thing. I should probably just give an overview of what is going on in the video. I'll first be putting in some clips of when I was finally figuring out a shoe situation, and then also drawing a rapier guard, and then the majority of the work was on working out a background room so that I'm not using this Minecraft screenshot from a build of mine for everything. That's still a while, but I hope to eventually have a 3D model and then be able to draw over that. And then I'll have a small bit of the progress that I've made on actually doing some final art for Cadfael instead of just rough layouts. That said, let's get into the video. I've been talking long enough for this intro. Here goes nothing. So, I've been in the background working on a bit of a rough character concept for what I'm going to have my appearance be as Cadfael. This is a very rough model, just figuring out the general layout of stuff. Hopefully to involve a lot of glitcher and metallic effects, and hopefully not too much overworking myself or just overestimating my capabilities as very new to this stuff, but I don't know if that's avoidable. But yeah, I'm kind of in this going for a bit of a split setup. On one case, a lot more refined and just sheltered to some extent. Shy version that is, well, dressed for indoors and ceremonial stuff, in this case, like with the white boots and all of the fancy outfit and so on. And then a slightly less posh, but hopefully more bejeweled, or like just more jewelry wearing a more adventurous version that's kind of got more of a storm vibe to them. Yeah. I've been working this on the background and also including some IRL sketches and some references from real life and so on. And I'm so happy that I finally figured out something to do with the eyes and stuff. And this isn't what the majority of this video is going to be about, but you'll see some progress on this thing towards the end. But yeah, and here I'm adding a bit of a rapier for extra 3D effects and so on. I also added a pattern to the back of that cape. And yeah, honestly, I was going to do the rapier design, like, for the entirety of this recording time. And then I never got around to it. And I first went to doing the boots, I did the rapier guard and stuff. I went on to 3D model or to start 3D modeling things. And I never got around to the rapier because it scares me, because that's organic curves. Speaking of, here's me starting to figure out a bit of a room setup. I first took it into isometric stuff to get a 3D sense after drawing out like the general layout in person, or like IRL on some sheets of paper. But yeah, to get like a 3D sense of things, I first went to the familiar isometric layout. That is cool and all, but also just it's a lot of work and a lot of manual work. And also, the main reason I chose this was just because I was scared of Blender, and if I want to have a 3D base for my thing, I'm going to have to go into Blender anyway. And so eventually I ended up switching, which should be coming up right around now-ish. There we go. I finally got over my fear and started doing things in Blender, because isometric was also being a pain. But yeah, cue a lot of me having to Google stuff and not knowing shortcuts and having to do everything the slow way. But yeah, mainly because I know some 3D stuff, but I know it from Maya. And Maya is not the same thing as Blender. Though Blender is amazingly powerful in its own right. And also so much integrated stuff and so on. But yeah, it took me forever, and maybe I'll point it out later, but it took me forever to find how to snap to vertices, which makes a lot of this a lot less correct. But yeah, overall, like for the room and also generally the environment, I've been hoping to combine just things that I find pretty. Both, yeah, in this case combining a lot of light and stuff from large windows, but also having those windows be in that sort of Venetian variation on Gothic, and then having a corner for masks and all the theater stuff, and I'll introduce a bit more of the room layout later when it actually starts manifesting. But yeah, right now I'm kind of putting together a rough outline of stuff and like the vaulted ceilings, and I'm thinking of having either a star chart or just a galaxy vibe for that top bit, but we'll have to see, and I hope it's in frame. It was really hard to get it in frame, but yeah, and here I'm adding the first bit of those windows, always having that one reference export that I've worked with so much. Gosh, that file is messy. But yeah, overall, so where you're starting to see the corner where I've put myself, that is kind of where the main desk setup is, but also a bit of a reading nook and things. Maybe I'll put in a photo of the IRL sketch that I made. But yeah, and here I'm figuring out lighting situations, putting in a chandelier, not having made it warm light yet, or like a stand-in for a chandelier, not a proper chandelier. And this is where you start seeing certain shaders be a bit messy, just because they have stuff clipping through and stuff. And also, another fun thing, first off, I do none of the vertex optimizing, or, I forget what it's called. Basically, if you chain a whole lot of quadrilaterals, after each other, the computer can recognize that, and then it chains stuff through there. And yeah, you should do that for proper geometry. I gave up on that at some point, but yeah. And the floor is kind of a meter by meter grid, because that's just how I made my sketch, and that way I can kind of adjust things and things. And here I'm figuring out a camera angle that would work to show at least some of the room. It's amazing how little of the room it shows. But yeah, and then figuring out where to place the character and so on, to kind of give myself a bit of a reference. But yeah, and as it's slowly coming together, you're starting to see like where the desk setup is and so on. And here I do a first couple of test renders and so on. But yeah, so that back right corner over there, that's kind of where I keep all of my costuming stuff. Just I love, well, dramatic levels of dressing and makeup and all of that, and making costumes and wearing them, and spending time figuring out what would work best for a costume and all of that. But yeah, so that's kind of going to be an area to show off that stuff, have my mask collection, various pretty weapons, and just vanity, some sewing materials and so on. And this is where I start working on something for next to that, which is my piano, which ended up not being in frame after taking me an hour, and my first proper, like, getting back into hard surface modeling for Blender. I spent a lot of time on this piano, and it turned out surprisingly accurate, but yeah, it's out of frame. But yeah, so that's kind of in there, but to kind of the left of where you're looking right now, if you saw the big double opening, that would be a door to like a proper piano room. But yeah, continuing on the room tour, to the right of the piano, as you might be seeing, there's also an opening that's opening up into the bedroom, which has a huge window front, and you'll see some of that later on. And it's wonderful how the light comes into there in the morning. But yeah. And this is a lot of me generally figuring out how to model stuff again. Again, please don't pay attention to the edge flow, which is, I'm pretty sure what that is more or less called with the whole chaining quadrilaterals. For example, on the outer rims, And of course that is when I finished, but yeah, on those outer rims, if I clicked on one of them and it told it to connect over, especially for like edge cutting and so on, it would cut over. Like for example, as you can see here where it cuts around the entire cube when I do something, that's because that still had proper edge loops and so on. But yeah, anyway, but yeah, not entirely all of this room is based on my real one, but I try to give it some resemblance. That piano and the stool is carried over and stuff. But yeah, and this is, I think, yeah, I'm starting that corner of display cases and so on, trying to figure out how to do that corner and things, spending forever getting used to how to do modifiers. But yeah, and just because I had to merge all of them and so on. Boolean works very differently in Blender. But yeah, and eventually I start trying to extrude everything in to get the different shelf things, and that is one of the things that I ended up giving up on, like at least doing the diagonal for that, because this was already scary enough. I also this is when you see me finally having managed to extrude stuff, managed to combine stuff properly, but yeah. And once I put in all of these different shelving levels, or like, it's more of a glass display case, yeah. I tried to extrude that bottom bit, and I have not figured out to do, because like with extrude, you can move things out of the faces that you're extruding from. But I haven't found to scale them in yet, or like to just scale them from a spot. I'm sure there's a way to do it, I just need to figure out how. But yeah, there's a lot of foreign stuff to me so far, but I'll be learning. But yeah, that said, if you have that shelf across from it, those two windows, I'll be probably having a telescope and a bit of a star globe there, or astro globe. I forgot what it's called. I've looked up what it's called. It's yeah. I like sparkly things, and the night sky is probably one of the main reasons why. But yeah, here's where I figure out the bare minimum on how to do transparencies in Blender. That was such a complicated system. But I figured out something very basic eventually, and started getting my semi-transparent windows. But yeah, and here's me doing some test renders, which is the 3D modeling very well equivalent of watching paint dry. But yeah, so you have those windows, and then closer to them you have a bit of a reading corner and so on. Yeah. That said, yeah, this is when I finally figure out how to snap things, like two vertices. This is like 4 hours in, but yeah, and then I estimate a very shoddy estimation of doors just to have something in that space. And I tried to do wood paneling without looking up references, and I mess it up quite a bit, and I also didn't find how to do the scaling for all of those equally, and I was too lazy to actually do the proper thing and copy and paste them and merge them and all of that stuff. And yeah, and this is when I finally remember that Venetian thing, and or like going slightly gothic, and I start actually moving all of the lights up and so on. Also, I tried talking slower at the start. I don't know if I feel like I've started talking at my normal speed again, which is probably a bit quick. I usually watch stuff at double speed. My own stuff, I don't watch faster than 1.5 times speed. let me know if that's a problem. But yeah, and this is a lot more of me adjusting and so on. And then finally going on to make just the roughest layout of the bedroom. Yeah. It's a really nice space, and some of this is idealized as can be, just if I have the opportunity, I might as well. But yeah, just kind of getting a general layout of stuff, and yeah, it's really pretty lighting and stuff in the morning, just a nice view into gardens, and yeah. That said, honestly, I'm probably not gonna focus too much on the bedroom unless I'm procrastinating. It was slightly demotivating to work that long on the piano, and just with everything in Blender being something I need to Google, it gets demotivating eventually. But yeah, I'll try to work on that probably more, or towards the end of this, you'll start seeing some stuff that might actually be final artwork. So I might start working on this. And yeah, speaking of light through windows, this is me actually finally, or me testing, because like the main lighting setup that I was using was kind of going with a bit of an evening lighting setup, like the lights, yes, northern hemisphere and all of that stuff. The evening lights coming from the west and stuff. Like, essentially I set it up so I would be facing south to just capitalize on the big window fronts that I have set up in my design for this suite of sorts. But yeah, and I'm just messing with a couple of lighting things and so on. And this is where you get to watch, no, not yet. Later on I have a straight up 4-minute, almost 5-minute clip of just giving you a sense of how long this takes to render. I think I ran two and a half hours of this. Yeah, this is rendering start. But yeah, I was trying very hard to hope, like, you can't see it as much, but from the screen capture, but it pops out a separate window where you see the render in full screen. And I was working on, or I was looking at that, and just it basically the way it seems that Cycles works is that essentially it starts off with a relatively noisy version, and earlier you would have seen like kind of the very low res and so on. I assume it just uses whatever it can calculate, like whatever few spots it can calculate, and then generalizes that. And then the more time you give it, the more basically runs and so on it can do until it stops, until it stops having noise. Eventually, hypothetically. This thing ran for 2.5 hours and it still had noise. But yeah, the main thing was just to get a sense of the details and so on, and I was really, really, really wanting that door to show up. Just, I spent time on those doors, and none of them would show up in detail. There's probably something to be said there about ambient occlusion and so on, and how I should probably use that mainly for the spotlight. But yeah, that said, with all of this, I ended up kind of going on to take this rendered image and then put that back into 2D, where I kind of put it through some posterization, just like down to 1 or 2 black and whites, like straight up black or white, not the black and white that includes scary scale, but black and white. But yeah, I ended up doing a couple of passes of that, and also cranking that up on occasion, but keeping it in black and white. Just as you might have been able to see on this rough sketch, it's like the entire face definition and so on is very much through shading and stuff, which doesn't lend itself to the Live 2D workflow from what I'm seeing. I know that Iris from Hololive has more of that shaded style, but just it's hard to make 3D, and it's just a lot simpler. But yeah, and also I wasn't sure it's for the face structure, because I'm trying to go for a somewhat gender neutral looking, or like a design that can pass for both masculine and feminine, depending on how you want to dress it up. And yeah, that was one of the big things, and like, while I've been drawing on this and developing it, basically every person that I've told about it has also had to answer the question of, okay, which direction does this lean? And why do you think that is the case? And just, I've been doing a lot of refining and stuff. But yeah, through that posterization and like just layering those over each other, I think I finally found a way to simplify that face into something I can work with. But yeah, also it's a bit hard to see here. But essentially there's some gold eyeliner that's both over the eyes, and then also a tiny bit under the outside of the eyes. It's just solid, like, gold reflective borderline metallic, which was inspired by some golden glass pen, like water ink that I got, which is remarkably close to the real gold look. But I got some of that on my skin and just, it looks so beautiful. But yeah, so I wanted to incorporate that and just be able to mess with that, and it adds some glamour. But yeah, you can't see it as clearly, and you'll see it later on, just to kind of give a sense of what that is. That's probably going to be the hefty eye makeup. I'm probably keeping the makeup very simple, but just with the exception of those 2 bits of eyeliner and some black eyeliner to just emphasize certain corners of stuff. That's when I finally finished that rendering. But yeah, this whole video that you're seeing in the background is sped up from 10 hours, 10 and a bit hours. Modeling the 3D stuff took maybe 5, 6, 7. Yeah, rendering that out was another third of that. But yeah, I'll probably... Like, you can see me starting to add some of the eyelashes and so on. I'll probably go on to refine those again later. I've been kind of putting off starting on any final art just because I haven't been sure. And also on this one, I have a bunch of different line weights that I'm not sure how to... if I'm going to keep that way, especially when it gets to the top hair. But yeah, and here you see me filing a lot on that shape. And let me tell you, it is so nice that Clip Studio finally got Liquify. It's a lifesaver. But yeah, that's also another thing that you can kind of see here that I'm slightly unsure about, and that I try to mess with Liquify, is that I have like the jaw angles very high up. I might put those further down. I don't know if that is interesting, but yeah, just kind of the considerations that I had here, also me figuring whether I want baby hair or not, but it kind of gave it a bit of a greasy appearance keeping them in. But yeah, anyway, here I got to rekindle a bit of something I used to do a lot as a kid and just enjoy doing in drawings, and that is just adding filigree details to drawings and just filling space with just random organic lines. And it's... I wasn't sure how I was gonna do, but it turned out pretty well. Also, with the hair and so on, I haven't gotten past, like, that stand collar yet in the drawing, but already it makes for such a nice portrait. And I'm getting slightly distracted because I'm seeing myself add the chains from the earrings and stuff, and I like the sparklies, also in jewelry and chains and so on. That said, like, IRL, I tend to avoid wearing very heavy, like, especially earrings, just because they eventually, like, they pull on the earlobe enough, and I'd rather, especially because I only have one ear that I'm probably wearing most of the heavy stuff on, I don't want that to be asymmetric, but yeah. So I had a bit of a struggle figuring out how to design that long earring based on a very nice brush of just the amount of earring brushes that you can get off of Clip Studio's like acid showering. But yeah, I wasn't sure how the rights were on that though, but yeah. And towards the end there you saw me kind of mess with the gold and so on and just kind of get a sense of that, and I might do like a dark version with just all of the gold and maybe some of the gems or some of the glowing of the gems sparkling and so on. But yeah, that might finally be final art, and if I'm editing this properly you should be seeing some of the artwork here at the moment. But yeah, I hope I didn't talk too fast. Let me know about stuff. I hope to be making progress. I'll probably see you again in 2 weeks unless I have smaller clips. But yeah, thank you for watching and listening, and hopefully you'll get to see more of the final version soon. Maybe I'll have more song stuff, probably in that short form, until I have proper audio to put behind it. New to the YouTube things, but like, comment, subscribe, question mark. But yeah, I hope to show more of this progress soon. Bye.